Hello. I think it's everyone's birthright to know the basics about the world you've been born into. As teachers and students, I'm sure all of you share this simple conviction and participate in providing and nourishing the tools required for this pursuit. That being said, this letter is concerned with a most basic subject, often taken at face value with little personal investigation and verification. The subject of this text is the shape of the earth, and my motivation is to encourage the cultivation of critical thought, and young especially, by the investigation of this subject. Below are some relevant points, and directly following is a short bio, so you know a little bit more about me. I would like to mention first, though, as flat earth has likely run through your brain already, that by that I simply mean all the oceans are on a level, and besides fairly minimal surface realities, such as mountains and valleys, so too is the rest of the earth. I don't make any claims to an alternative model, as at present there's not enough information to make one with accuracy. I'd like to start by saying that I'm not religious, nor do I spend much time in the conspiracy realms. Since the 8th grade, I've spent most of my time exploring my keen interest in physics. And before then, I was always experimenting by myself. Never would I just believe something. I had to test it. It had to be verifiable, repeatable, and scalable. It had to be within my direct experience. Well, these are some principles of the natural sciences. The majority of my free time, more so than anything, like what most kids would do, was spent on study. In high school, still managing to graduate with honors with relative ease, I spent a minimum of 2 hours a day on science and physics research by my own volition, while others were partying or having firsts with opposite sex or copying friends' homework while watching the TV. Now, I don't mean to insult anyone or generalize and say every student does these types of things, but statistics are there, and just personally anyway, I find them a bit shocking. Anywho, such goes on, as you surely know, and all I mean by all that is just that I was removed by that and spending my own time in a different way. And that time you could say was 2 hours a day, 6 days a week for 4 years, at least being tentative, which rounds up to about 2,900 hours just in high school, easily 3,000. So I put in my time, and in college the trend continued. I had more time on hand then, and also the range expanded of what I read and thought about. And, I put in my time well. If I had a question, I'd talk to the physics professor or email the author of what I was looking at. And, all that research aside, the foundational assumptions of the theories aren't ever really addressed. And seeing that they wouldn't ever be addressed, I decided to leave my pursuit in the university, along with $1,000 allowance I got from the VA for going every month. Well, so my perspective is formed just digesting all of that info acquired in my personal journey, and the introduction of new material here about the subject, which follows logic and natural science. So while I dug into these theories pretty heavy, these points are basic, and the first one is in the realm of kindergarten skill sets. Now, if you ask a 4-year-old to get a cup of water from a tub and ask him to choose from a cup, a tangerine, or a fork, the kid will pick the cup. Why? The water must be held into a container, otherwise it finds its level. And all other ways to transport this water would entail another container, pumps, or unlevel surfaces, all of which must work with this principle or against it and override it, because otherwise this tendency of water to find its level will happen. Now, if you were to take a series of containers of greater degrees in size, starting from the cup to a tub to a pond to a lake to a sea to an ocean, Based on your own experience, you'd expect to see the same thing. Well, we're told the oceans are curved, so the question arises, at what point does this curve start? And by what force does this action happen? The first is given by an equation of curve for a sphere. Given that they say it's 25,000 miles around, that gives 8 inches of curve per mile squared. Might not be a lot for the first mile, but that adds up pretty fast, and it is noticeable even with your naked eyes. Or would be, rather. Now, this has been found lacking. And I'd like to say there are many people, upon hearing this math, who went out and looked for themselves, and they are lacking. Now, the second point is also found lacking, but requires a little bit more explanation. When looking for a force that would hold the water down, people say it's gravity. And when looking for an example of gravity, many may be tempted to drop a rock or a microphone. However, while this is an observation of what the theory of gravity says should happen, it's not a demonstration of the force of gravity itself. It's not an example of a mutual attraction of masses by virtue of their mass alone coming together. For example, there's no way of knowing in this example if the object simply fell because it was heavier than the air or due to another type of force or physics, which is at presently not understood. So, to look at a practical example, Cavendish had the right idea. However, his experiment is one experiment, and it lacks peer review. In order for something to be a proof, it's repeatable. It should be done a few hundred times at least in different places by different people before it can be taken as a proof here. So that's out of the window. But anyway, if you look into his notebooks, you'll see that he said he had issues telling whether there was interference, because it was just done in a shed, or if it was really the action or what was going on, So it's not such a certain thing. It definitely needs a redo. So without a demonstration of the force which is purported to have these oceans, the question of where does the curve begin gains a little bit more potency. Now, before continuing, I'd like to pause just a moment to address what I guess might be happening in the reader's mind. At this point, you probably have plenty of questions or thoughts or bickers. And I'd just like to say they are addressed by sources below. The questions are pretty common and yet numerous, and to address them all now would be inappropriate. Besides the fact that there are people with original research out there and experience which is different than my own, which might do it better. So, to be blunt, the lack of scientific proof for the globe model could go on for pages and pages. And I know people, students, and teachers often push for time. So dig into it at your own pace. But I'm telling you, the research is out there, and I've directed, I've gone through it, and there's some bullshit, and there's some good stuff. So the sources below are quality. And there could be long talks about how, the lack of spin of the Earth and the Michael Morelli experiments and Airy's failure and the others. The interpretation of that null result, Earth, the meat and potatoes of modern physics. You could talk about the electromagnetic interpretation of that void result. The Lorentz transformations and whatnot, which is what Einstein's first theory was all based on. And then so goes the rest, So there's that. You could talk about the Greek Eratosthenes measurements of the globe and whatnot. So these are things I might imagine be going through your head. But I'm just saying they are addressed, Look into it. Bear with me. So I just encourage you to seek out your own questions and feel free to to shoot me a message if you have something specific and you don't feel like reading through everything to find it. All right. Well, on to the next point. Something that anyone can do is just go down to the beach and look for the curve people say you can't see with your eyes, but look at the math. By the math, you should be able to see that with your eyes. The human eyesight on average is good for 30 miles given weather conditions, and that's plenty enough. Left to right, you can definitely see that at the ocean. If you're not trusting your eyes, take a nice straight board and a level and go down to the ocean. There's thousands of people now who are going to the oceans and looking for this because they hear about that and they don't find anything. But don't just believe me, go check it out. And that's the best way to make this something real and learning and not just about believing what you heard some guy said or something. All right. And there's people out there who don't even mean to be looking for the lack of curve and who are contributing to that anyway. There's a photographer who took the longest, world record photograph, 250 kilometers. And, account for the observation heights and whatnot, there should be 40,000 feet of curve that's just not there. So. And there's a bunch of other claims out there saying that, you aren't able to see it. And it's true that for smaller distances, since it is kind of like an exponential, it is small at first. But even if the Earth were 100 times bigger, you'd still be able to tell. And, that's because we have an extremely precise measuring tool for finding level, which is water. You can find it to a thousandth of an inch, level to a thousandth of an inch, and water is abundant. So this is by no means out of anyone's means, I guess, to investigate. And there are many other points, like I was saying, but I'll leave you just one more, and it's the photographic proof, because people say, there's pictures, but there aren't pictures. There's computer-generated images. All those pictures of the globe are strips of data taken from digital sensors and put together. The one with the least amount of data strips is a globe with 12. And I think it was from 3 different satellites too. But the majority of the pictures are many more than that. And, again, I keep saying pictures because that's what our language is in our language to do so. But, a picture, being more technical, is like, you have a film and it has a colloidal silver on it and it gets exposed to light and whatnot. But there's not one of those in existence of the globe from space. So if we're looking at these images which go through computers and are edited, and you can Google Mr. Blue Marble to check out the guy whose job is to Photoshop these things for NASA. The question is, do those count as proof? Well, it's like, let me ask you another question. Did you see the latest Star Wars? Well, I hope you see this subject isn't as certain as you may have thought it was, and that further investigation is warranted. I encourage you as an educator and student to take a deeper, more thorough look at what we all, and by all I mean every flat earther that I've encountered, has taken for a given for the majority of their lives. Again, I believe every human has the right to know the basics of their environment. One may debate about gun rights, gay marriage, and the lot, but the shape of the earth should be known as a foundation, and as an objective matter only discussed. The proof for the globe model I have found to be lacking among many others who have looked at it more closely. Using the standards science, natural science, and logic, I think it's too lacking for the presentation of it in schools as an absolute fact, unless it's to be investigated further. And all investigation going on by real people right now is not in the favor of it. There's gyroscopes and things that are just really tough to argue with. But I encourage you to look at it And, I'm here as a real person, just take my own time, which I'm glad to do, especially since this may indirectly affect the thinking of younger people especially. And we're in a time right now, socially, politically, in a lot of different ways, where we need to have critical thought and personal investigation. So that's my motivation again. So thank you for your time, and I hope you have a good day. Kindly, my name is William. Thank you.